Tiger fans, welcome back to another episode of the Clemson Sports Show. Joined alongside me is Matthew Connolly, as always, and we're not going to be previewing the game on this Thursday. That's typically what we would do either on a Thursday or Friday ahead of a Clemson game, but they're on a bye week this week, of course. No offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator for us to talk to on Monday, but we did get to speak with a few players. Dabo Swinney did a teleconference with the media and also did his weekly call-in show. So, Matt, before we get into everything that we're going to discuss in this episode, just tell me how you're doing. You know, it's a bye week. You know, are you chilling with the family? How's everything going with you?
Yeah, having a little more time with the kids, which is nice, but also stressful. But yeah, enjoying the bye week is a little more chill than a normal, typical week during football season for sure. So doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing great. I got my dog here in this wonderful apartment that I'm in. Recently moved in, and I'm doing pretty good for the most part. Going to be heading out to Myrtle Beach to see Clemson wide receiver commit Adam Randall on Friday. Very excited about that, and that's honestly just kind of a hint at things to come for you all. You know, even though Clemson does have a bye week, we're going to be rolling out the content. Matt has his film review on Thursday. Going to be seeing Randall on Friday, as I mentioned before. So keep it locked in with ClemsonSports.com. So, Matt, before we get into what's coming up in the future, let's talk a little bit about Clemson season thus far. Let's give kind of a brief assessment. You know, we've talked about it the past few episodes. Just tell me, where do you think Clemson stands right now, 3-2, heading into the bye week?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously the defense has played great. It's been probably better than we expected. You don't give a touchdown up the first few games of the year. Just incredibly impressive performance. I think offensively, obviously, it's been a struggle. I don't think any of us expected it to be as much of a struggle as it was. You know, offensive line has had its issues. DJ Uiagalelei struggled some with accuracy, with his decision making. Obviously, there have been a lot of injuries as well that the offense has been working through. So, 3-2, not where I don't think any of us expected Clemson to be 3-2 at this point. But at the same time, as you kind of alluded to, still a lot of season left and plenty of time to correct things. And, still an ACC title out there for Clemson to get, can extend its streak of 10+ win seasons still. So a lot to play for after the bye week. I know they're hoping to get things back on track when they go up to Syracuse next weekend.
Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we feel like Clemson needs to do the rest of the season going forward in order to right this ship and hopefully, for the program, contend for another ACC title. And I'm just going to mention beforehand, I feel partially responsible, joining the beat. As soon as I do, Clemson immediately goes downhill. But, there are other factors here. And, there's a lot of talent on this team. And we're going to try and do a fun little segment here, Matt. It's called Fixing the Tigers. We're going to go ahead, address a lot of the glaring issues for Clemson, show what needs to be improved in order for them to make it to that 10-2 mark, which is what they're hoping for, and potentially win the ACC. Let's start off with the QB play. You can't really talk about this Clemson Tiger team without mentioning DJ. Matt, what do you need to see from DJ? What do you need to see from how the coaches use him going forward?
Yeah, so there's a lot, obviously. I saw a list today ranking the top 130 quarterbacks, all the 130 FBS quarterback situations in the country, and Clemson and DJ is 113th. So just crazy to just kind of see that at this point in the year. But, I'll start with his accuracy. I think that he struggled with his accuracy some at times, just hitting the open receivers when they're there. Put a little more touch on the ball. There are a lot of opportunities I've seen where he's had an opportunity to hit guys open in the flat on shorter passes and just fired it in there. And I think that's one area that he needs to work on. I think in the run game, he's done some really good things, but also just keeping maybe a little more on the zone read game. And I'll have some of that in the film review, but just opportunities where you could potentially have a big gain if you just keep the ball and he's kind of handing it off. And then decision making. I mean, I think there are times that he has guys open and maybe he's a little hesitant or lacking in confidence, or for whatever reasons, a little just cautious with throwing the ball. So, yeah, I know that's a lot, but I just think the way DJ's played, there's a lot of room for improvement right now, and just want to see him continue to get better.
Yes, I'm going to go from the mental side of things. DJ needs to completely forget about these first 5 games of the season. Not necessarily the issues that he struggled with in terms of his footwork, and accuracy. But in terms of how down it could have been at times, the struggles that he went through, especially on the road against NC State, and even in those home games, those home victories against Boston College and Georgia Tech. And he kind of needs to just rechannel back to last year. Get back to the DJ who went to Notre Dame, put up over 400 yards passing, the DJ who beat Boston College in a close, tough game while throwing for over 300 yards, having 4 total TDs in those games, no interception. Get back to that DJ. Get back to that kind of confidence that he had last season and try and channel it forward, in the future here. I think it was a really good sign that he came out after the Boston College game and worked on his skill set. Some people may have wondered, was that set up to, show the media, hey, this is what I'm doing? I'll make this very clear. I was out there on the field. DJ did not ask anyone to go out there. He just did that for his own self-purpose and helping to correct those issues. Now, another, part that people may attribute to DJ struggles this season is the offensive line play in terms of not giving him enough time. And some of the struggles that we've seen specifically from some of the younger players. What do you need to see from the offensive line going forward, Matt?
Yeah, I thought they took a big step forward, honestly, this past week against Boston College. I mean, the run blocking was much better. I thought Matt Bockhorst looked much more comfortable at guard than he has so far this year at center. I thought Hunter Rayburn actually did a nice job at center in his first start there. So, I think that just, being more consistent with assignments, knowing who to block, all that kind of stuff in the running game. Boston College didn't play a lot of 3-man front, but when teams do that the second half of the year, which I'm sure they will, as they kind of see on film that Clemson struggled with it some, being able to adjust to that and be ready for that. And then, I think for the most part, they've done a good job protecting DJ. There are times when they can maybe be a little bit better, but I think it mainly is just the running game, being able to establish the run if teams go to that 3-man front and, are dropping 7, 8 into coverage, just being able to establish the run, get them out of that and open up some more things in the passing game.
Yeah, I think the offensive line will be fine. Not great, but they'll be fine. They'll be serviceable going forward. The good thing is they're not going to face a defensive line front like they saw against Georgia in the first game of the season. That's not going to be the case. So, maybe they'll be able to reassess where they could have done better in that game and a few games afterward. But I think the offensive line will be fine. The wide receiver and tight end situation, however, that remains up in the air for me. I mean, Justin Ross is, to a fault, the primary target for DJ, and honestly, too much of a safety net for him in that passing attack. Need to see more wide receivers get involved. I think they took a step forward against Boston College. 7 different receivers caught the ball on 13 DJ completions. So tell me a little bit about what you saw in that game. Do you think that's, encouraging going forward for the rest of the season for that pass catching group?
Yeah, it was encouraging, but still, it's just been a disappointing year for that group. I think that we all, including the coaching staff, had really high expectations for the receivers. And, there's been too many drop passes. The blocking on the edge hasn't been good. Route running, I think, has been pretty good, but not as doing a great job consistently getting open. So it's weird. I thought E.J. Williams would have a really big year, and he hasn't yet. And part of that's been injuries for sure. Joseph Ngata has been inconsistent, even, and I said, in a film review, or I'm sorry, in a story this week about the receiving corps, that it was kind of like a summary of Joseph Ngata's career, where, he had one play late in the fourth quarter where he makes a huge grab on third down over the middle, cuts out, picks up a big gain, huge play to keep a drive alive, and have a chance to put the game away. Yep, against Boston College. And then a few plays later, he drops a pass that would have either resulted in a touchdown or put Clemson at the one that would have put the game away. And so it's just kind of been a story of his career. He has some moments that make you go, wow, that's unbelievable. This guy could be one of the best receivers in the country. And then he also has those inconsistent moments with a drop or a wrong route or whatever it may be. So, I think that the talent's there for sure, but just doing a better job catching the ball for one, just when you have opportunities, bring in the pass, and then also just doing a better job blocking on the perimeter. A lot of those screens, whether it be in the running back or the receiver screens, that went for big gains last year. We haven't seen that as much this year. And I think obviously part of that is losing Travis Etienne and Amari Rodgers and some of those guys, but also part of it is definitely blocking on the perimeter.
Now, Matt, I'm not going to talk about last game necessarily because Davis Allen got ejected, Braden Galloway dealt with an injury. Let's talk about what we saw those first 4 games of the season from the tight end group. 10 receptions combined between those two, 59 total yards, no touchdowns. That just needs to improve. I'm sorry. I mean, you need to get your tight ends more involved in the passing game. You need to make the defenses paid that way. I think, you can attribute that to a heavy reliance on Justin Ross, but you got to get those tight ends involved and even the running backs involved in the passing attack. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think it's part of the same thing that's bothered the receivers. It's been drops. Braden Galloway's had several key drops, including in the opener against Georgia. And then it's also been blocking and just, not making plays, whether it be, on screen games or in the running game, just not consistently making plays. I actually thought Sage Ennis did a nice job when he got his opportunities this past weekend. When Braden Galloway and Davis Allen went out, I thought he really impressed me as a blocker. He was more than willing to kind of stick his nose in there and get after it and get some important blocks. And then he made a nice grab when Clemson was backed up deep in his own territory. He made a nice grab and extended a drive and got them out of their own end zone. So he's a guy I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see more of him in the second half. And I think he's deserved that, even with Clemson having a couple of veteran tight ends and Braden Galloway and Davis Allen.
Now let's quickly talk a little bit about the running back group. Will Shipley remains to be seen when he's going to return. Kobe Pace had a great game against Boston College. Phil Maffa, showed some spurts, brought, in my opinion, just a lot of energy to that offense, a sense of urgency when he ran the ball. Do you feel very encouraged about what you saw against the Eagles from that group?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I thought that before the Boston College game, I thought for the first part of the season there was a big gap between Will Shipley and then Kobe Pace and everyone else. I thought that there was a pretty big gap there, but man, Kobe Pace really impressed me. He ran hard. That long touchdown run he had, he was, hit the hole, read it correctly, and was gone. And Phil Moffitt, going back and watching the game for the film review, he was really impressive. I mean, he made some really nice plays, had a nice spin move on a run that got Clemson near the goal line. I mean, I was really impressed with him and was kind of wondering, why he wasn't used more early in the year. And I know the staff wanted to redshirt him, but I just feel like he could have helped the team the first 3 or 4 games of the season as well. So, yeah, definitely encouraged by what I saw from that group. Feel good about them going forward. And then when you add Will Shipley back in the mix too, I think it's just going to be a really talented, really deep running back room, which is what the staff thought it had going into the year.
Yeah, it remains to be seen if Phil Maffa is going to play more than 3 more games the rest of the season and burn his red shirt. I don't know if that's going to happen. It really kind of depends on Shipley, but once again, I'll go back to what I saw from him. He ran with a sense of urgency. That offense, in my opinion, the way Clemson's offense has operated has been, we'll get another drive, we'll get another possession. The defense is good enough; they'll be able to buy us some time, so to speak. Well, Phil Maffa ran like this was going to be his last carry every single time. I really came away impressed from him, and I saw him up close, and he brought this new energy to the offense I hadn't seen before. Let's go on over to the defense side of the football. We're not going to necessarily do position group by position group, but, just give me your overall assessment on the defense. Brian Bercy's obviously out for the rest of the season, torn ACL. Tyler Davis is dealing with an injury. Just talk to me a little bit about where you think the defense stands right now.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider the injuries that they've had with Tyler Davis, Brian Bercy, James Skowski going out against NC State, I really feel like Landon Zanders at safety. They had several players miss this past game. Mario Goodrich was out, Joseph Charleston. So they've needed some guys to step up, and I really feel like they've done a good job of that. You had R.J. Mickens have an interception this past game. Andrew Makuba has been great, a true freshman who just continues to make plays. Xavier Thomas has obviously been on a whole different level this year than he was last year or the year before. We haven't seen him look like this really ever in his career, and certainly not since his freshman season. So been really impressed with it. Say that again. Sorry.
He leads the team in sacks, by the way.
He's been great. It's more of the Xavier Thomas we saw as a freshman, and maybe even a little bit better. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the defense has done all you could ask for, in particular with all the injuries that they've dealt with. Against Boston College, I thought that on play action passes in particular, the middle of the field was a little too open. You had some tight ends running free. even some receivers running free on some deep routes. The quarterback wasn't able to hit them necessarily, but that's not something you can count on later in the year, and particularly when you go play Pitt in a couple of weeks and Kenny Pickett and that group. I mean, they're just throwing it on everybody right now. So definitely need to get those mistakes corrected before you go to Pitt in a couple of weeks. But yeah, overall, I think you can't ask for much more than what you've seen from the defense.
All right, so before we get to Pitt, we're gonna do something a little bit fun here, Matt. And it's something that we didn't discuss in our pre-podcast meeting, but I'm sure you'll be down for it. You kind of got no choice. We're rolling with this right now. Let's start off with Syracuse. We're gonna kind of do a not extensive, but kind of a mini game by game breakdown of how we see the rest of the season playing out and what we think Clemson's final record could potentially look like. This isn't going to be a definitive final prediction list, but we're going to just kind of look at these matchups very briefly. Starting off with Syracuse, 3-2 right now. 2 losses were to Rutgers by 10 points and at FSU by 3 points. Matt, what's your gut feeling on that October 15th on the road?
Yeah, Syracuse has been better than I expected this year, particularly defensively. Beating Liberty was an impressive win. So I don't think it's going to be an easy win for Clemson, but I do think Clemson will find a way to win that game. But that'll be a tough one for sure. I mean, that's a tough place to play too. I've been there before. It's loud. It's a really good environment on a Friday night. So, yeah, looking forward to watching that one. I think it'll be a pretty close game, but give me Clemson.
Yeah, I'll take Clemson there too. And I really like how the schedule's set up in Clemson's favor. They have a bye week this upcoming weekend, whereas Syracuse is going to be playing against Wake Forest, really tough team, number 19 in the country. They're going to be playing them on Saturday. So Syracuse will have 5 days in between that game and their matchup with Clemson. So I really like the way that one fits in for Clemson's benefit. Let's look at Pittsburgh. I mean, the offense, you mentioned it with Kenny Pickett. He's just been absolutely tearing it up this season. They're 4-1, first in the ACC Coastal Division. Pickett has over 1,700 passing yards, 19 TDs, 1 interception. If we are going to mark a loss in Clemson's calendar, it really feels like this would be the one that we would lean toward the most. How do you see this one playing out on the road October 23rd?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't expect Pickett to do to Clemson what he's done to everyone else and just throw it up and down the field and put up a ton of yards and points. But I do think that they'll score enough to beat Clemson. I just don't trust the Clemson offense at this point, and that could change depending on what happens at Syracuse, but I need to see it first. So just picking based off what I've seen this year, I'll pick Pitt in that game. I think Pitt will score some points, and I just don't think Clemson has enough firepower from what I've seen so far this year. So give me Pitt.
I'll take Pitt too by the transitive property. Matt, how many points did Clemson score against Georgia Tech at home?
Yeah, what was that, 14?
14. How many did Pitt score at Georgia Tech this past weekend?
Well, it was 42 in the first half.
They put up 52. So
what they end up with it, I know it was in the 50s.
Yep, it was 52. So they did that on the road against Georgia Tech, and Clemson could only manage 14 at home. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to drop 52 on Clemson like they did against Georgia Tech, but I'm taking Pittsburgh in that game right now. Now this next one is it's one that I feel like could be somewhat of a nail biter just based off the fact that Clemson, we're assuming, is going to lose the previous game, but Florida State, they're 1-4. We know that it's just been a bad season. It's just been an awful season, but they did get a win.
Like a bad decade at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. As someone who's from Florida, I can definitely vouch for that. How do you see this one playing out, Matt?
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say a decade, but definitely a pretty bad last 4 or 5 years. I just don't see Florida State winning that game, and I think that'll be a statement game for Clemson. Whether they beat Pitt or don't beat Pitt, I think that Clemson's going to want to make a statement, particularly after they went down last year and didn't play the game. I was there as well. It was not a fun trip to go watch some buses pull out of the Clemson team hotel and head to the airport. So give me a motivated Clemson team in that game, and I don't think it'll be close.
Yeah, I'm taking Clemson, but I'm not going to say that it's not going to be close like you do, just because I just don't think the offense can score enough points to where the other team would be out of it. Against Georgia Tech, Clemson's defense played stellar, excellent enough to where it should have never come down to a James Skalski tackle near the goal line on 4th down. Should have never came to that position. Clemson's offense should have put up at least 30 points, 27, 30 points. That should have been a blowout from the beginning to end. I just don't trust the offense enough to say that the opposing team in any game the rest of the season, and maybe except for UConn, will be out of a matchup with them. So I'm actually
maybe UConn. Yes, UConn. We don't need to talk about the UConn game.
Hey, once again, I'm not trying to say something and then people will come back a few weeks later and say you said this and it didn't happen. No, I'm not going to take any chances there. But I think the Florida State game is going to be closer. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't see Clemson really having a blowout outside of that UConn game the rest of the season. Let's go on over to Louisville. This is another scary one. This is kind of close to that Pittsburgh game. Louisville's 3-2. Their losses are to Ole Miss and a close one against Wake Forest this past weekend. Matt, who are you going with here? And it's a road game for Clemson, I should say.
Yeah, I'm going to take Clemson, and I just think that just overall talent, Clemson has too much. I mean, I think that I think Louisville can put up some points, and I think that Clemson. First of all, I think going by the way I predicted, I think Clemson will have its way with Florida State and have some confidence going into that game, and we'll kind of keep it rolling. So I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means, but I do think Clemson will find a way to win that one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Louisville here. I saw some concerns against with the defense against Boston College. Some holes in the secondary. I just feel like teams are going to take advantage of that going forward, especially that Pittsburgh game with Kenny Pickett. I believe Louisville is going to take advantage of that. It's tough. I don't want to pick against Clemson in this situation because I do believe they'll have that victory against Florida State. I think they will be emotional, but it's a road game against Louisville. Louisville has had some good losses this season, whereas I think Louisville's 2 losses this season against Ole Miss and Wake Forest have been more impressive than Clemson's 2 losses this season. Clemson did have somewhat of an impressive loss against Georgia, but that NC State game was just bad, man. I don't know. I'm going with
Louisville. I'll take at Georgia and at NC State over those other ones, or versus Georgia in a neutral site and at NC State.
You think so?
Yeah, well, I'm not sold on Ole Miss, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
That's what makes it great, man. We don't have to agree on everything.
Yeah, we're not going to agree on everything here. So, that's the fun of it. We're switching picks on this one here. So, you've got Clemson against Louisville. I'm taking Louisville right now. Might change my opinion depending on what happens in that Florida State game. All right, so they have a matchup with this team named UConn. Matt, we don't need
Clemson big.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting thing that weekend will just be recruiting, honestly. Yep. I think you'll have your hands busy that weekend. I know several prospects are going to be coming in for their official visits. Trevor Etienne told us he'll be in that weekend. That'll be a fun weekend, but I don't think it'll have anything to do with the play on the field. I think it'll just be kind of monitoring recruiting and kind of what happens there.
Yeah, once again, I don't know if Clemson's offense hasn't earned enough trust from me thus far to say that I'll put any game as a definitive blowout the rest of the schedule. But yeah, I don't see them struggling against this UConn team, this 0-6 UConn team. I'm taking Clemson big, probably about 30, 35. Defense will get a score or two. Now
I'll take 50 plus. 50? I'm on record. 50 plus, yeah.
You know it's 49 against SC State, right?
Yeah. SC State might be UConn.
All right, we'll see about that. We'll mark that.
We can make some wagers as we get closer. We can wager a lunch.
All right, I'm down for that. We'll put it on Chick-fil-A. Let's go on over to Wake Forest, arguably the second biggest. You can say this is neck and neck with Pittsburgh, but they're going to be playing Clemson on the road November 20th. Matt, I think this is a little bit too far out to say definitively. I really want to see where Clemson is in a few weeks before making a prediction, but how do you see this one playing out?
I'm with you. Like this one I've honestly gone back and forth on a lot, and it's hard because I think Clemson, that crowd playing at home, that defense, I think that it'll be able to rattle Wake Forest the same way that it did Boston College in a lot of ways. And I'm going to pick Clemson, but I don't feel great about it. And I very well could change my mind before then. I've just seen Wake Forest come to Clemson in recent years and just kind of, I wouldn't say fall over for lack of a better term, but they've been down a couple guys, and it just seemed like early on they were just kind of checked out and not even feeling like they could win before the game even started. So I know this is a different Wake team. I know it's a really good Wake Forest team. I know that they'll have a ton of motivation, but I still think Clemson's defense will make enough plays that somehow, some way they'll find a way to win.
Yeah, completely agree with you here. Wake Forest has not won a game in this matchup since 2008. I know they're riding high right now, but I think this is honestly going to depend a lot on whether Clemson follows my path that I see them going down, which is a loss against Pittsburgh and a loss against Louisville, and how they respond to that. Are they going to be like, is the season out of reach for us? Are ACC goals still in play at that point? I think a lot of it will depend on that. But right now, if Clemson and Wake Forest met this weekend and they played, I would take Clemson. I just need to see does Clemson have much to play for by the time that game approaches. But I would take the Tigers right now, mainly because it is a home game.
That's funny. So if they were playing this weekend, for me, I think I would take Wake Forest, but I have confidence in Clemson that by the end of the year that they'll be playing better. After the bye week, after getting some other tests, I feel like they'll be better at that point late in the year. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I just, in my opinion, I want to see what Clemson, because right now Dabo Swinney has said it before. I believe the players have bought into it. They have something to play for. The playoffs are off. You can scratch that off, but they have an ACC title to play for right now. But what if they lose against Pittsburgh? What if they lose against Louisville, which I believe will happen right now? Is that going to influence the team's mentality? Are they going to feel like there isn't much to play for if the ACC title is off the line? So that's why I would probably hold off on this pick. I'm definitely not going to make any definitive predictions here, but I would lean toward Clemson. And who knows by November 20th where we're at in the season. Let's go on over to South Carolina, final game of the year. This one's kind of a toss-up for me. Just I don't know how to necessarily feel about this matchup. I feel like Clemson should win and win fairly handedly, but at the same time, I've mentioned it before, I'm just not trusting the offense enough. Matt, tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, if you don't trust Clemson's offense, you should watch South Carolina's offense, because man, it's a mess as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, honestly, from what we've seen so far this year, it's just two pretty bad offenses. But I'll give Clemson's defense the edge against South Carolina's. And look, I've been impressed by South Carolina's defense, quite frankly, early on this year. But, man, I just have a tough time seeing them continue that throughout the year, and I'll still give the edge to Clemson's defense. So, yeah, from what I've seen so far, it's been two pretty bad offenses, two pretty good defenses, but Clemson's defense a little better than South Carolina's, and I'll go ahead and take the Tigers.
Yeah, I'll take Clemson here. Outside of the UConn game, I think this is the one I'm expecting them to win the most by. I think the tough one about this one when I was evaluating this game is, once again, what does Clemson necessarily have on the line? But at this point, just based on how I believe the schedule will go, I believe they'll be 7-4. I think they will still have, potentially a good, okay bowl game to play for. And I think they will feel a little bit rejuvenated coming off that win against Wake Forest. So, and the win against UConn.
Hey, there's plenty to play for with a rivalry with Clemson, South Carolina.
Yeah, there is plenty to play for.
I know you'll see it. I know you're not from here, but it gets pretty heated.
What would you compare this to? Because obviously, Florida State for me is the one that I grew up with. Like that's the big time rivalry right there. Is that comparable to this one here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so it's weird now, or different now, in that South Carolina's been so bad recently. But for several years, and I was covering South Carolina at the time, but it was, 10-2 South Carolina, or 9-2 South Carolina against 10-1 Clemson, or 9-3, or God, you see what I'm saying? It was good games. It was top 15, top 20, top 10 matchups year in and year out there for a stretch. So yeah, man, when it's a top matchup, when these teams are both really good, it's as good as any rivalry in the country. I think they really don't like each other. The intensity is there. The crowds are really into it. So it's a ton of fun. I'm thankful I've been able to cover this rivalry for, I guess, 10 or so years in a row now. I've gone to the games and they've been great, fun, memorable games. So expecting another one this year. Maybe not the way we thought, where Clemson just completely owns the game like we thought going into it. But yeah, it should be a fun one. I think you'll enjoy getting your first taste of it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be on the sidelines taking pictures. I'm very much looking forward to that crowd environment, because what I've seen from Clemson thus far is, I was told, I actually had a brief conversation with Dan Orlovsky, the first home game of the season, first ACC home game of the season. And he told me, he's like, Clemson, it's as good as it gets. And it's definitely lived up to it in terms of the intensity, the crowd noise. I mentioned before that, and it legitimately earlier today, my ear is still popping just how loud the crowd got this past weekend against Boston College. Matt, let's look a little bit.
That game will be in Columbia, but it's a good environment in Columbia too, for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. I'm wondering just how many of the Clemson fans will travel for that game. And based off the rivalry, what you've said about it, I'm expecting the crowd environment to be great there as well. So very much.
Have you been to Williams-Brice when you were covering Florida at all?
No, I never actually traveled for road games. It was all at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, so that's all I knew. And based off what I saw, I thought that's as good as it gets in college football. But Clemson, the intensity the crowd has brought has been really impressive. And even to that Georgia-Clemson game, I know it's more 60-40 Georgia, but Clemson fans really traveled well, and I think they'll do the same thing for the South Carolina game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Let's keep looking ahead a little bit to the future here in terms of our own personal content that we have coming out on ClemsonSports.com. By the time this video is uploaded, you'll probably have your film review out, if not earlier. Talk to me a little bit about what fans can expect from that one.
Yeah, just going through and breaking down the key plays in the game and what went right for Clemson or what went wrong, why a play did work or why a play didn't work, and just kind of diving in and really breaking it down in a film review. So popular segment or a popular article every week on our site, and people have really enjoyed it. So I encourage people to come check it out and see what it's about. $1 for 4 months. You can't beat that. Come check it out, or $10 for a year. And you can look at this one and every one the rest of the year and all of our other recruiting and insider content.
Matt, I went to Chipotle the other day and I had the smoked brisket bowl. It was delicious.
Don't tell me this. I really want to go. I really want to try it.
It was excellent. It was great. It was $10, but after an hour, it just kind of wore off. That feeling wore off. I moved on. But I thought to myself, $10 could get you a whole year of content, access to message boards, articles and all that. Of course, I'm comped. I don't have to pay for it since I work on the site. But I would highly encourage everyone listening right now to go ahead and subscribe. That deal is as good as it gets. Yeah, it's as good as it gets. Don't necessarily know how long it's gonna last, so be sure to take advantage of it. Get your username on the site. We have a lot of people joining. And I'll also throw in my own personal plug for what I've got coming up. Part 2 of my feature story on Nathaniel Joseph, 2023 wide receiver commit for the Clemson Tigers. I unveiled part 1 today. If you all didn't get the chance to read it, I would highly encourage it just to get to know who Nathaniel is off the football field. He really prioritizes the classroom. He talked with me about making generational wealth, making sure that his kids are set. Just an impressive young man, really has his head on his shoulders. And his coach, Luther Campbell, aka Uncle Luke, give me the loot. I was too young to know of Two Live Crew, but I am somewhat familiar with him. So I got to actually speak with him. He's the head coach at Miami Edison. He talked to me about Nathaniel, and we're gonna have a little bit more from my conversation with him in part 2 of the series, which focuses on Nathaniel as a football player. So be on the lookout for that. Check out all the great content we're going to be having this upcoming week and the rest of the season. So yeah, Matt, do you have any final takeaways? Anything you'd want to say?
No, yeah, just come check out the site. And like you said, that Nathaniel Joseph feature was excellent. It was really impressive to me to have, you see a teenager talking about investing in properties and investing in real estate and doing all these things, investing in businesses. And some of my buddies we're in our 30s are kind of looking at doing some of this stuff now, and to have a teenager already thinking that far ahead was really impressive.
Yeah, he's
So yeah, great feature. Check it out.
Yeah, he's taking 8 classes right now. He's got straight A's through the first 9 weeks, 3.8 GPA. And the first thing that he told me, I asked him, describe yourself. He could have interpreted that as a football player or anything else. He said, first off, it all starts in school. Football may not last forever. Football won't last forever, but your schooling will, your education will. So very impressed with that young man. Definitely check it out. Get to know him off the field. And then on Thursday, get to know him on the field with the second part of our feature. Matt, this was a great show. Really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed looking forward to the future. We disagreed a couple of times, which was awesome. Gotta love the little controversies there. We'll have a few wagers coming up, so very excited about it.
Yeah, man. Y'all enjoy your bye week, and we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to the Clemson Sports Show. For Matt Connolly, I'm Joseph Hastings. We're signing off.